Thank you. I want to explain a little bit about the art part. I think Pepe did a fantastic job of explaining the science behind this, the beautiful hairpiece that I wear. That I just want to share with you that actually I kept thinking that if he crucifies those little things into my brain, that they'll read better. I'm here to tell you they weren't reading better. It was something malfunctioning, so I got crucified. I want to tell you a little bit about the art part that really starts with the meaning of the Nahual. The Nahual is a Maya Quiche concept of cosmology that explains how we go through life and how we go into death. It's not about one God, but it's about a spirit that is assigned at birth to each person and that mirrors you. And when Pepe came up with this concept, I said, I will do it if we call it the Nahual. Because I had just had my Nahual read at a sacred site in a Maya room in Guatemala. And it was uncanny what the person reading the Nahual to me said about my art, which how could she have known? Including the fact that I use blues, that I have this deep understanding of blues, and that has been a lifelong journey for me of looking at the waters of the world. And even though I am part Maya, I had never seen the waters of the beautiful Yucatan, which is where the Mayas started. I had only seen the deep blue waters of the Pacific Ocean from El Salvador. So when I was an adult and finally went to see those waters, I was mesmerized, and I still am. And so this passage of every type of blue, so there's every type of blue, I don't know if you noticed, that goes on here, and it's a subtlety about this, and it really just rips from my heart. The other thing she talked about was about my use of yellows, and I don't use the whole gamut of yellows. I have two yellows. I have the one that's the mustard type, and then I have a brilliant yellow with green that I didn't bring today. So I stayed in that gold. It's like a golden yellow, which kind of makes sense because it's the yellow oxide. It is what our primitive, our ancestors used to make art. It was yellow oxide because it was what was available to them. That with then heat turned into red oxide, which is what you saw. Did you see when I first took out the big brush? And in the little container, it was that red oxide. So I think what you're surmising here is that my use of color has a background to it. It has a reason for being, and it really has to do with the accessibility of art, which is then what brings us together. Already in my practice, I was looking at how art should not be for the elite. How art should be accessible to everyone. And I went digging into that and the brain. And the closest thing that we have found in terms of the cave paintings is that it was, at this point, it's Sulawesi caves in Indonesia that are the oldest, that the paintings are the oldest about 40,000 years ago. But the same cave paintings, the same type, are coming up in El Castillo in Spain and in France, with about 1,000-year differential. So 40, 39, 38,000 years ago. And they looked at, number one, what pigment they used. And it was the yellow oxide and the red oxide. And then the anthropologists have been looking at what makes it art, as opposed to just stick figures that, that one wants to record. But it really isn't that. There's a moment of abstraction that happens that is man-like. And they do believe that at that moment, that being became man. Those beings became men. And there would never be another way for man. And we are those people. It just tells you that the difference between human and animal is abstraction in the brain. It is about creativity. And I was so touched by that thought that indeed it is what differentiates us. But then it means that it should be for everyone. And the idea then that we, through this conversation, are leading to perhaps one day be able to decode creativity in the brain and be able to then put that AI that you saw trained in my art, which this will then do the next set of training for the AI. And so the AI will be different because each time I do this, then it goes back to training the AI. And by the way, it's not just the art that trains the AI, it's my brainwaves creating that art. And that's where we are at the cutting edge. Because now it's not really about an AI model that you can get out of Google. It's really about the AI model of my brain on art. And the idea then that one could put a headset on children in a cancer ward and tell them to just close their eyes and think of a beautiful memory with their family or a beautiful ocean, and then the AI model can then be triggered by their brainwaves and create a completely different projection. And there they have their little video in their phone, and they have created art. And so the idea that accessibility to art should be for all really is one of the things that drives us. And why we continue to do this, so that we can really get to that place where both the art and the science are humming together as we progress. And progression means doing more of these. Progression means having more incredible students that are going to go out and change the world. We're trying to change the world, and we're going to do it with the help of the Nahual team, with the help of UH and engineering, but really with the help of the world, because this is going to take a whole lot of computer power to then get to that point where we know what the creative process in the brain is like. So on that, I want to stop and see if you have any questions or comments. I would love some comments. And I would love to give you a mic. Does anybody have questions? Comments? Do any of the students have questions or comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hello? Okay. So, I was wondering if you could put into words or describe what goes through your mind while you were painting the Nahual, and what inspires you. Is it the colors, or do you dig into your culture, or is the music? What goes through your mind when you decide what you're going to do while you're painting?
That is probably one of the best questions one could ask about this, because of course it is about the brain. So what's going on in my brain? Well, we have, remember, this is a setup, a scientific setup that we have to set up every time the same. So the new grammar of sound I had not heard before. So my brain waves triggering that sound is a brand new thing. So there it was. You were hearing it at the same time that I was. And that definitely triggered me, because I saw myself slowing down in one of those very melodic moments. I saw myself doing this. It's like, oh, really? But you know, this is just a very guttural reaction to it. I totally surmise that if that grammar of sound had really heavy moments of, you know, salsa or who knows what, I have a feeling I'd be dancing out there. So that is just a natural reaction to what my brain is triggering. The other thing that I'm reacting to is the AI model itself, because that's the light in my canvas. So if you notice, I chose the canvas is not a real canvas. It's actually yute, which is a hemp, and it's handmade and also not handmade, fabric made in not fabric. It is made in El Salvador, natural material that has not been treated. So what that means is that yute absorbs the light. But here we are in a projection of the AI model that then only begins to appear on my canvas as I give the canvas light. So you saw me paint with the white. The white is pure gesso because it's really white. So it's almost like I'm beginning to give life to that projection onto my canvas, because that's the only way I can can see the colors, otherwise I don't see the colors. So I'm beginning by putting light into the canvas. Then I chose the light blue. The light blue is still a very reflective blue. It's white based. So that was my second pass through that. And then the AI model is changing and it's beginning to get shapes. So somewhere in there, I don't start by saying, today I'm gonna paint with these colors and I'm gonna paint with that to the right and that to the top and that to the left. I don't start, I start with a clean slate. So what's happening is as the AI model begins to tell me information about my paintings, then I begin to react to that and there it starts to take shape. I think where the ultimate creativity happens in this process is when I have to look at what I'm doing and unlock the potential. It's where stuff becomes art. And so that's on me. That's like I'm sweating bullets part that I have to be able to unlock the potential. So, but there's moves, for example, that I have put through there that, for example, I brought these two tools. They help me make certain type of marks and they help me get away from the painting for me to be looking at it so I can be sweating bullets and unlocking the potential of the painting and understand it telling me what comes next. So I choose these long-handed things so I can get away from the painting. Otherwise I'd be, like scratching little things on the painting. I can't see the painting. I only see what's there. The other thing that I do is I do a very liquidy type setup. And I do it heavy. Because you saw how heavy the materials came on. But that has to do with the fact that the mixing of the colors is happening on the canvas. And I need it thick. I don't need it absorbed into the yute because I can't move it around. So I've got to be able to move it around with my power tool here. That then gives me the marks that I do. The other thing I do is I use my hands. Did you see me put it into my hands? And I do that motion. I can't get that. These are lines that come out of it. These are just blobs. But what I can do, my fingers, what I can do with, well, not my fingers, but the heavy duty gloves that I use, is what I can do is I can leave my mark. So it's my personal mark. So all of these things didn't just come today. Because we repeat this, then it has been developed. It doesn't mean that I have a beginning and an end. I don't. And that's the hard part of this. That I really have to let more and more the AI model tell me about me, the sound telling me about my brainwaves, and telling me something about me, both of those things that are triggered by my brainwaves, and let that reflect into the painting. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to add to that, Geraldina, because the implications are great. So she is in the loop. She's in a closed loop where the sound, the neural sound, the neurally triggered sound, and the digital painting are affecting in turn her brain activity and what she's gonna do next, right? So the fact is that these aesthetic stimuli are really powerful neuromodulators. They can change the way you act, your behavior, right? Which means that if we are able to analyze, the impact of music on Geraldina's brain or in your brain, then we can reach to some parts of your brain that might need a little bit of more activation because you are in a depressive state, or you are right and you are blocked, you cannot generate more output. Then we can promote that to get around. So the first concept is neuromodulation and closed loop. I think it has clinical application in art therapy, right? You have people with disorders of prefrontal cortex, of decision making, with depression, and outcome from traumatic brain injury. I think we can use art, to help, rehabilitation of these people. So that's a very important application. Think about a person who is paralyzed, cannot move, right? with this type of technology, they could speak to us again in the world of art, right? In the music of art as well. So this could be another communication channel for people that are locked in, due to a stroke or some type of brain injury. Think about children, learning, to play or to use tools. In fact, how these could be used to promote learning, to facilitate the process of understanding yourself. After Geraldina has been performing with this, her brain is learning the internal model of the environment, the brain-computer interface, and she's now actually looking, and using these auditory and visual outputs to guide, to some extent, her art. So there are many applications, and we are very thankful for this opportunity. I don't know if there are any other questions. I think happy to answer. The students, many of you, this is the first time you see this, so you're welcome to any comments or questions you might have.
Let me add one more comment, that one of the things I have to think about, but it's really not in terms of specifics, because remember, the AI model is changing. And so it's not specifics, but somehow it's this distribution of negative space and positive space that tends to show up there as if I have studied that AI model, which I don't. And I don't do it on purpose, because I don't want to get used to it, even though it is going to continue to change. But in essence, I am painting this painting for the transparency to come on top. So it's accepting that Nahual. And each time, I could sit here and look at this all day long, because each time I think, oh, maybe I was too heavy-handed there, or maybe, but this Nahual keeps changing. So it's a really interesting point that I have to put enough on the canvas to accept something that is changing. And that's on me as an artist.
That's the equivalent of our color, piece, but in the visual domain.
Right.
Well,
It's changing.
It's changing.
Yes. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah.
Anybody else? No questions? No comments? I'll take comments. Yes?
I have a comment.
Right here.
Thank you so much for this beautiful art, and I'm glad that you mentioned the connection between the music and how it's affecting, and I didn't know which one comes first, because it should be the music after, and I think it showed most in the yellow spots, the 2 yellow spots, and I wonder how you were feeling that time, because even the music switched heavily, and it was not so much relaxing anymore.
Right.
Yes, and that was a mix of colors in these 2 spots. It's almost like a reborn of
Yes.
the whole painting.
Yes.
So I would love to hear about that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I feel like this is like a baseball player recalling their every move in a baseball. But I understand the concentration that goes behind that. The yellow was not only a feeling that the music, when it changed, evoked, but it was an organizational tool.
Okay.
So when you see that once I put the one in the middle, I think is the first one I did, then that organized that entire mess, let's say, of colors. Then it came around almost like the sun reorganizing. So I was reorganizing. And that's what the music kind of brought up. But of course, I'm triggering the music, so it's very funny.
Yeah.
This closed loop is a trippy thing, like a person in the arts told me. This is really trippy, like what comes first? And I'm trying to explain the best I can that I'm letting it flow. But in the end, creativity is about letting it flow. That's why anybody would want to see somebody painting. And as I think you're all aware of this, it's very rare to see the process of any artist. It's extremely rare. We only go to that very nicely put together and on a wall, blank wall, white wall, lots of space around it, not this this entire mess of a setup. So we don't get to see the process. I, as a student of art all my life, have gone to the museums of the world looking at the process, and trust me, that's a really hard thing to do. I have looked at the Monet lilies in Paris, and I wanted to know which one was the last color he put out. I mean, I gave myself a break, like which one was the first? Well, you know, by so many of those colors, I couldn't tell where the first one. So I started from the end back. Like what would have been the last color and what would have been the last row? That is a really interesting way to look at art. It's like, what was the last thing she was thinking? In this case, it's what was she thinking, right? But then when does an artist decide that's the last one? And I have kind of gone into this. You saw me taking one of the Diesel guys that are the only guys that I've found that can handle wet paint, because I know I paint very wet, and give me some color. So I take these again as a reorganization. And I don't know if you saw the way I did this, it was very similar to, in a way, to some of the AI model that was up there, but it was also reminiscent of the brainwaves, you know, that I had been watching in there, right? As you were so patiently waiting for this thing to work. I was watching the brainwaves, so that wasn't there, and that came out at that point. So it is it really is, you're watching creativity happen right here. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Geraldina. I'm still in the team.